الحضور الكرام أهلا
Honored
بكم.
guests, welcome to this lightning talk session.
Unleashing the potential of cooperation and cooperation in media today. During these times of crisis, more than ever, the combined effort of investigative journalists, fact-checkers, and supporters of independent media, we must ensure to ethically and professionally push for more cross-border collaboration in a fragmented world that we live in. With me to talk about this crucial topic are, from various parts of the world, Mr. Luis Rosales, journalist and political strategist. I have with me Maria Albertina Navas from Ecuador, advisor, teacher, and researcher. Jihad Omer, who is an executive director of An-Nir Initiative. Also, Mirna Abu Zaid, a researcher and academic, but also the dean of the Jordan Media Institute, as well as Peter Jones, who is the Africa Check founder. Please help me welcome first Mr. Luis Rosales from Argentina, who is an Argentinian journalist, writer, academic, with a track record of work in the political sphere of Argentina, but also currently in international news at A24 channel in Buenos Aires. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am really glad to be here after a very, 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 very long trip, you know. We are coming from the end of the world. Argentina sometimes is called the Patagonia, the end of the world. I have several hats. I can use a couple of hats in this presentation this morning. I can talk as a journalist and as a strategist. I want to show you and I want to share with you some strong experience that we are witnessing in our region. Why Latin America is going to be explained, something of Latin America in the Arabic world. Because I think that we have a lot of things in common. Even we are very far away each other. Latin America has around 20 million square kilometers. The Arabic world means 13 million kilometers. 600 million people, Latin America, 300 million people, the Arabic world. And we, as a region, share a common language, two languages actually in Latin America, Portuguese and Spanish, but a same way to believe in God. The majority of the region is Christian. You have practically the same religion and you share a language. So we have, and with difference, each country is different than the other, but we have a lot of things in common. So I think that the Latin American experience can be helpful for the Arabic world. This is a current political map of Latin America today. If you saw this map 40 years ago, practically all the countries were dictatorships, with a few exceptions. Dictatorships promoted or helped by Washington, D.C., in order to stop the influence of the Soviet Union promoted in Latin America through Cuba, through the dictatorship of Cuba. Now, practically all the region is under democracy, which is a real advantage for the region and for the people of Latin America. And the distribution of the ideologies of the current governments in Latin America is almost like this. In strong red, the left, in strong blue, the right, and in light blue and light red, the center left and the center right. So the distribution, the ideological distribution of power in Latin America is a little bit balanced right now. But I'm going to explain you today something which have a lot of things to do with the combination of media and a crisis of our political system. Because our political system is in a crisis, in a big crisis. we have a representation crisis, a crisis of representation. People are really upset what democracy and different parties and different outcomes in the elections are giving them. Main reasons, because there is a big insatisfaction with all politicians, because insecurity, rob, crime, inequality, unemployment, poverty, and it is no matter that the government is from the right or from the left. The outcome and the feeling of the people is frustration after that. This frustration, combined with a big crisis in the representation of the traditional media, provoke a real earthquake in the politics of Latin America. The appearances, the new anti-systemic candidates, politicians, that they are coming and winning elections. So Latin America is changing right now. This is a little sample of the anti-systemic who are winning in different elections in Latin America. When the system is practically situated in the left side of the spectrum, the anti-systemic came from the right. And when the system is situated in the right side of the spectrum, of the political spectrum, the anti-systemic comes from the left. So in the first one are anti-systemics from the left, the Peruvian Pedro Castillo, the Colombian Gustavo Petro, the Chilean Gabriel Boric, and in the down, the anti-systemics from the right, the Salvadorian Nayib Bukele with Palestinian origins, Jair Bolsonaro from Brazil, and the newly elected president of my country, Javier Milei from Argentina. What are they have in common? They have in common that they are new political figures, practically with no experience. One was a rural teacher, the Peruvian. Another one was, for instance, Gabriel Boric from Chile, a student before being president, 36 years old, just finished the university and was a teacher after that. Bukele, and okay, a new political figure, disruptive, completely disruptive. They follow a completely exotic, different way of approach people, of get the people vote. Against the current system, instead of critics, if you criticize them, and the system criticizes a lot to them, instead of diminishing power, they are empowering. Their food is the critics. Almost like Donald Trump in the States or other candidates in Europe. And they are the symbol, the promise of a great change in the main issue the country needs. That's the reason why a former military won in Brazil, Bolsonaro, an economist won in Argentina, and a student in Chile, because the main demand of the electorate is going to be, they feel that it's going to be fulfilled by this candidate. They represent that thing. And to finish, I want to introduce you the newly elected president of Argentina, a very exotic figure. Probably one of the main representation of these anti-systemic candidates, an economist, completely out of politics, who promised a real change in Argentina. You have to take into consideration that Argentina, 100 years ago, was one of the richest countries in the world. Actually, at the beginning of the 20th century, we were the richest per capita country in the world. And maybe 50 years ago, we started the long decline process. So, and the decline process was related with populism and leftist ideas. So, the response of the people in this new combination of social media and crisis of the system is a right-wing economist, Javier Milei. The real challenge my country is facing if is the Argentines are ready to take the medicine we have already bought at the pharmacy a few weeks ago in the election, because this medicine is going to be probably painful and bitter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis. Ladies and gentlemen, we move yet to another speaker from Ecuador this time, Maria Albertina Navas, an advisor, teacher, and researcher. Dr. Maria Navas, her research area are social media, citizenship and politics, disinformation, and digital humanism. She will discuss the challenges of disinformation, a case study of Ecuador national strike. In this talk, Albertina Navas will summarize the 18 days of chaos that she experienced firsthand when her country, Ecuador, was completely paralyzed by a national protest led by indigenous communities. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I will try to summarize in 8 minutes, 18 days of chaos I lived in my country, Ecuador, in Latin America. Let me give you some context. All the indigenous communities from all over the country decided to go to the capital city, Quito, in order to protest against the government because of some uncovered social needs. Unfortunately, some protests turned violent. So in a couple of days, we had more than 40,000 people on streets, and 150 people, more or less, were arrested because of the violence. And unfortunately, 18 days after, we had a balance of 9 fatalities. Most of the people who died in the arms of our students of the School of Medicine. I say our students because I serve as the Director of Strategic Communications for the Catholic University of Ecuador. And while this was happening on streets, also our campus was on a crossfire. What happened is that when the protesters were approaching their meeting point, they were blocked by the police, and a confrontation occurred right in front of the main entrance of our university. So the glass door exploded, and the campus was taken by both parts, by the protesters and by the police officers, as you can see. The protesters were looking for shelter. As you can see, there was a crossfire of gas nutshells. Actually, we collected more than 200 of them on campus. And we had some police officers that entered without authorization. Fortunately, we sent students and employees the day before to remote work and remote class. So we only had on campus a few students from the healthcare careers that voluntarily showed up in order to attend the wounded. So while this was happening on streets and this was happening on campus, actually our university was caught in the crossfire, both on campus and also on social media. Let me tell you what happened. We posted the official statement of the university indicating that we agreed with the motivations of the protests, but that we disagreed with the violence involved. And we announced that we were not going to provide shelter for the protesters, and instead that we were going to promote the dialogue between the government and the indigenous communities. As soon as we posted it, it went viral. And during those 18 days, we had more than 26,000 mentions about the university on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which is 10 times larger than the usual social conversation about the university. Unfortunately, 80 to 90% of the posts were negative. Most of them accusing us as promoting terrorism in Ecuador. Therefore, it was very difficult for us to know what to do. What would it be the best reaction, whether to respond, to ignore, or to remove any posts. So in that changing environment, with a high percentage of uncertainty, we were actually facing a disinformation scenario. There were some true facts framed in a false context. There were also false facts framed in a true context. And there were also some true facts told without any context. Therefore, I would say that disinformation is any kind of manipulation that may mislead audiences to an invalid conclusion. Maybe you may be thinking, well, if this sounds so bad, why do people engage with this information? I would say there are three main reasons. It may be because some people may want to be in the spotlight. Maybe others have a further political agenda. And maybe others are benefiting from a business. In the case of the university, there were the three factors coming out. We found out that the person behind the negativity on social media was a graduate student that wanted to take advantage of the situation and jump into the spotlight because he wanted to become the mayor of the capital city. And he wanted to position himself as the hero, as the one fighting against the ones promoting terrorism in the country. And of course, he couldn't do this alone. He was supported by all the troll farms led and paid by the government at that point in time. So I don't want you to leave a sense of hopelessness. On the contrary, I would like to encourage you to think about this information as going back to the basics. If we recall ancient Greek philosopher Socrates, he talked about what he called the triple filter of truthfulness, goodness, and usefulness. And I think that this is more relevant than ever. So if we're journalists or communications directors or just regular citizens and we're facing any information that may sound a little fishy, scandalous, and that is being widely spread, please ask yourself these three key questions. First, are you absolutely sure that what you're about to share is true? The second one, is what you're sharing something good for the people involved in the story? And the third question, is what you're going to share useful for your community of followers? If some of the answers is no, please consider not to share it. And maybe in some cases, the answers are not that clear. In that case, there's another principle I would like to recommend. If in doubt, do not share it. So, if you would like to pick one idea or one statement from these few minutes I have shared with you, I would kindly say, please remember the triple filter of truthfulness, goodness, and usefulness. And when in doubt, please do not share it. I think that fighting disinformation is not about rocket science. It's sometimes just as simple as going back to the basics. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was very insightful. If you don't believe what you're going to share is true or correct and could affect the society around you, please try to refrain from sharing, because when you share, automatically somebody else is making money, but meanwhile, from sharing, somebody else is getting hurt. Next in the lineup, we have Jihad Omer, who made it here to the podium very quickly. He's in a rush and in a hurry. He is executive director of An-Nir Initiative. Jihad is a computer science graduate currently pursuing a master in language and communication technologies at the University of the Basque Country and University of Malta. He is executive director of ANIR, and he will talk to us about modeling the fact-checking process as an AI framework to be used in a better hope to improve the fact-checking business.
First of all, I'm happy to be here for the first time as a guest and as a speaker. And thank you for your previous sessions. I'll be jumping in to talk about a very different topics than my previous colleagues and my next colleague. Hopefully it's going to be nice. All right. I guess I tried to know the problem that could be a problem with the font, but the tech guys didn't. All right, whatever. We're going to deal with this. There is a task in automated fake news detection. In NLP it's called automated fake news detection أو بالعربي هي كشف الآلي للأخبار الزائفة. الفكرة من التاسك
The idea from this task is to present a bunch of texts that the artificial intelligence is to warn us if the news are false or other labels. For the above, it doesn't mean that as disinformation or no information. How the machine could categorize that, is it watermelon or strawberry, this is determined by the human. Let me tell you of how the researcher see the automated detection ways for falsification. At the beginning, during our research for 8 to 10 years, there's used to be two sides of working in the detection. The first method is depending on the content regarding linguistics. The other method is depending on the context of the distribution and interaction with the news. Depending on the linguistics characteristics, the researcher or the developer would try to categorize the content, whether it's true, false, or sarcastic. Again, humans can decide these categories. The computer cannot characterize. Another example for a research that I did in 2022, the database contained 4,000 claims about by taking the regarded way in linguistics, we see that the content, there are actual content, there are words like vaccine, hospital, health, experiment. Some of the words might be scientific. No, there are general harm that's been done, and it depends on the type of words and the linguistics characteristics of the classification of the content. This is the first look of how the researcher might find the automated detection of the falsification content. The other method is to consider the characteristics of the user, the number of interactions, the number of comments, if there are followers of the page, how many people are the content has been shared, and anomaly detection to reveal the outward characteristics. This example, someone shared 43,000 link, and the followers increased a lot of in 2017 by following specific algorithm to determine these characteristics. There's an outreach of the interaction of that user. We can use the linguistic characteristics to have the determine the content, whether it's false or true. But through the past 4 years, we didn't depend on the actual the reality of the content. We didn't invest in the detection as it should be. We didn't look for evidence or analysis or and analyze, but we only depended on linguistic characteristics and depending about behavior of the The researcher, Augustine, thinks in her thesis, PhD thesis, that this is not enough to characterize the detection of content. The detector should help in early detection when there is no evidence. You cannot, because it doesn't depend on actual evidence. She suggests that suggesting this model and mechanism when she symbolized the fact that checking into 4 sections. There might be some sub mechanisms, but it starts in whether is it worth to be checked? The claims are worth to be checked. Is it worth our time? Some bringing other documents that contain proofs. These are resources that can be supporting to that claim or rejecting it, and so on. And then checking the script where the detector or the fact checker is trying to understand whether the claim is true or false, and then gives the result. So going to the first step, is it worthy to be checked? We said that the checker which determine the claims of the content from of the examples now we have in researchers and also in the industry. There's a website called Claim Buster, contains some tools. You can put some of context or a text. It will mark whether this claim is worthy of checking. You produce a specific content, and now you see that some of the sentences that cannot be checked. So it's a percentage at the end, could be wrong or could be right. Another example from FullFact, they have a tool where they detect whether the claim is within the context, automatically detects the claim. This is another example to another Arabic research experience. It was an interview, and they put a score whether that content should be detected or not. The same process is applied to the content that has images and texts. We can modify the models to do the same process for text and images. So the next step is to bring the documents that support the claim or negate it. We try to find whether the piece of news is true or false. We took the claim, and then the tool try to determine some specific important words in that claim, and then check some documents whether in official pages of official public authorities. Each platform has its own resources that depending on. They try to determine specific areas in this text and using the language compared with the resources, and if then they come to the conclusion whether the claim is true or false. This is an example for a claim, a certain claim, and an example for a source, and now the tool is trying to detect whether the claim is compatible with the resource or not. After that, this should be the last stage to understand whether it's true or false. Each one of these steps, there should be a lot of cooperation between the researcher and the detector and the fact checker. The researcher needs a lot of information and data in order to determine that the content is worthy of checking. Can you set these standards in a specific way that makes the researcher easy to understand? The next stage is to bring the specific documents. Depends on the platform. Each one has their own resources. Can we have the resources organized for the researcher so that he can depend on in organizing the models and to give the tools to the fact checkers Are these websites available to bring the resources? The next stage is the checker should connect the evidence with the resource, with the claim, and then understand whether it's true or false. After that stage, we said that there should be the researcher should check the facts and how to compare the claim with the evidence. Can we modelize the structure of the fact-checking that the model could learn the structure of the how the content was written? The summary is that there has to be a collaboration between the fact-checkers and the researchers regarding dealing with the text, linguistic text, because there is specific connection in the Arabic area, and try to create a specific structure in order to enrich fact-checking with specific database that a researcher can work on. And thank you.
Thank you, Jihad. Ladies and gentlemen, Jihad gave us a fantastic expose of how the AI needs cooperation between various entities, basically in research and expert media institutions and practitioners. With me as well to bring in another perspective on this very important topic, Mirna Abu Zaid, who is a researcher and academic, Dean of the Jordan Media Institute since September 2021. Prior to that, Dr. Mirna had occupied the position of Dean at the Faculty of Information and Communication at the Antonin University in Lebanon. She has a rich experience in developing new curriculum to respond to the evolution in teaching journalism and communication. Today, and allow me to say this in Arabic to quote exactly her word, ستشاركنا اليوم آرائها
she will share her opinions about fragmentation, about professionalism and ethics. How can we harmonize different media parts from academia perspective? Thank you, Mohammed. To begin with, what I want to say that multiplicity and division is the norm in media and journalism between written and visual journalism, and then the digital journalism and the traditional journalism, between presentation and media over journalism, the multiple media over journalism. Also in academia, between theoretical and practical approach, still now they are being the subject of debate about studying journalism and media. But I want to talk about today is the diversity of being separated and setting the boundaries in ethical and professional standards, as Mohammed said. I begin to quote from Ibn Rushd from the 12th century. Unfortunately, it's still going on today. Ignorance creates fear, and fear creates hate. Hate creates violence. This equation that I've quoted from Ibn Rushd shows and explains why the slogan of ARIJ today, the cross-border collaboration in a fragmented world, is a priority. I will talk about 3 points here about division and cross-border and their interaction with the teaching of journalism, which is my main concern. I'll begin from globalization and division. As the previous century ended, the two polars dispute with their difference in ideology. Globalization created divisions, and there's a question, why do they hate us? Is essential and always been echoed in all languages, from the north to south and from west to east. And the recent echoes is in Gaza. Globalization did not give us globalization. We are seeing fragmentation, extremism, and fatal identities. There's a duplicity and polarism. In many cases, the most dangerous is human rights, where from out of the recent crisis, not all people are equal, as we taught by the Western cultures and wanted us to believe international legislations. All this is reflected in the journalism and media. We see it and we live it minute by minute. Last year, we saw Western media wars and covering war in Ukraine. We wouldn't forget the shock of the Western shock about the new white, blue-eyed refugees, a response by the world. 2 months ago, we saw other false ethics and professional. We see that the suffering of Israelis and their right to defend themselves are the highlights of media, why they are neglecting the rights of the Palestinians and the crimes committed against them and the human rights violations and that are lasting since 1948. The most dangerous of this division is the division of media as a whole body. Speculation has been from the first day from the local correspondence by the Western media, which indicates the lack of trust between the Western and local media. It seems that there's no trust in the professionalism of the local journalists, so that they are not reliable resource and their stories are not credible. How cannot we overcome this division? By knowledge and reducing destinations, by networking and working together. This is what we do at the Jordanian Media Institution. We created our educational plan in partnership with Western universities representing many journalism schools and also Arabic in partnership with universities from Lebanon and Egypt. Our educational program based on hosting professors from around the world and exchange programs with Norway, Germany, and France and USA. We believe in our institution that this partnerships allows students of media, the journalists of future, to be introduced to their colleagues, the Western future journalists, and to work together to produce stories that are the source of concern, an international concern. We are working in a globalized world. Crises are threatening us all, and the same threats are facing us all. From that regard, we think that these partnerships and these joint projects and collaborative stories to be produced that will allow also allows our students the students to be introduced to the standards of our professionalism in our region. It seems that despite the openness and the many networks that speaks multiple languages, there is not actual understanding to the region, to its problems, its crisis, to its wars, and repeat its wars. That's why when trainers from the US or from German or French trainers to follow up and supervise news material that are produced by our students, they will see that professionalism and the standards like credibility and accuracy and trusted source that govern the production of stories and news in the Arabic world, and see that journalism is same for them and for us, and the mission is the same for them and for us, and it is the general interest. I started with the ignorance that creates fear, and I close up with the knowledge that create understanding and accepting diversity. I will conclude with a quote from Bob Woodward that he said, the problem in journalism that you don't know what you don't know. Accordingly, we see that it's really important and crucial to develop these networks and this exchange program that's cultural and academic that open the doors for meeting the students from different identities, allowing them to be introduced to each other and to bridge the gap between multiple cultures. These are vital for us so that we can reduce the distance and to reassure the one standards in practicing journalism, which is serving the truth and help people to accountability for the officials and punish those are misdeeds and respect human rights as international value by bridging different cultures by academic exchange. That's why if we think, as we witnessed recently, that the stories, serious stories that are presented by the international correspondents are expensive. So absolutely, we are aware now of the cost of war. Knowledge is the base of accepting the different other, but each one should be humanitarian. Now let's get to know each other and improve this knowledge by academic exchange program in studying journalism so that we can see the vision of the world and we can see the world in each other's eyes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abu Zaid. And last but not least is I will invite Mr. Peter Cunliffe-Jones, who is a researcher at the University of Westminster, founder of Africa First fact-checking organization. Africa Check, a member of the advisory board of the International Fact-Checking Network and advisor to Arab fact-checkers networks as well. In his lightning talk about unleashing the potentials, Peter hopefully will suggest 3 questions to test why the misinformation, why do we check the misinformation, and why it really matters around the world with individuals, with organizations and states, as they are all making false claims all the time. Some falsehood make no real difference to real life. Others have catastrophic effects. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Shukran. Hello. When colleagues and I set up Africa Check in 2012, we approached a lot of donors for funding. And when we did so, often the first question that they needed me to answer was, what is the problem that you want us to help you solve? Today, and to me at the time, the answer seems to be obvious. But to them, there were, and there still are, lots of problems around the world, from education to healthcare to homelessness to gender violence. There's a very long list. And after several applications, funding applications went unanswered, I realized that in order to win support, we needed to be better able to answer the question, what does the misinformation that we are fact-checking do? What does it really matter? We can't fact-check every claim. We can't fact-check everything that is wrong on the internet or elsewhere, in parliament, in media, in community settings. We just can't do it. To edit, and I come from a background in journalism, to edit is to choose, is to select. But if we want to choose what matters, do we actually know what that is? How do we check, as Jihad was saying, the check-worthiness of a claim? How do we know what that is? People disagree. The answer that many of us give, and I've spoken to a lot of fact-checkers in the last 10 years about this, is that we select claims to check that we think are probably wrong and that have gone viral. As a former journalist myself, it makes sense to me that we focus on claims that we think have the biggest audience. at the same time, the fact that a claim has a large audience doesn't necessarily mean it has a large effect. For the first 3 years, perhaps 4 years of Africa Check's existence, the report we had that had the biggest audience was about the question of how many countries there are in Africa. We got a very large audience for this report, but the question was essentially geopolitical theory. What's a country? Nobody's life changed because of the answer that we gave to the claim around that. I stepped down from Africa Check in 2019, and over the past 4 years, I've focused on the question of the nature of the harm that misinformation causes and doesn't cause. And to summarize the findings, I identified 3 broad types of effect. First is that many claims have what I can only describe as either no effect or limited effect. The effect, if people believe the claims, which quite often they don't, is limited to a false understanding. There's no substantive real-world effect. The second is what I call meta-misinformation effect. That's meta-misinformation in the terms of the Greek word, not the corporation. The broad effect on society of a corrosive lack of trust caused by repeated exposure or perceived repeated exposure to misinformation in general, so nobody trusts anything at all, and false claims that accurate information is fake news, as a former American president used to say. The third type of effect, so no effect, meta-misinformation effect, lack of trust, is specific consequences caused when particular types of misinformation in particular circumstances create or reinforce a particular false understanding. And that false understanding is what causes harm. The question that I had back in 2019, it was one of the editors at Africa Check who asked me this question of how do we choose, out of all the claims that there are, how do we choose what is check-worthy, as Jihad said? The question I had is, can we understand what are the factors that mean that a particular piece of misinformation might cause only limited effect, a false understanding at best, or contribute to the broader effects of meta-misinformation, or cause a real specific harm? If we can do that, we can help ensure, and we can help prove to our followers, to our supporters, to ourselves, to our donors, that our work actually matters. To answer that question, I built a database of 250 examples of misinformation and observed effects that ran from harm to individuals' health through to abuse and violence and civil unrest. Doing the research taught me a lot of valuable lessons. The first was never agree to build a database. Never agree to do this yourself. It's a massive amount of work. Use somebody else's if you possibly can. The second and more positive finding was that by studying the factors common to claims that did cause specific effects and findings of claims that did not, I identified 3 questions that I think fact-checkers need to ask. Regulators, fact-checkers, others need to ask. The first is the claim seen or likely to be seen as sufficiently true by a sufficient number of people to cause a harmful effect? This differs depending on the claim. The second is, if people do believe the claim to be true, is the claim in fact sufficiently false? Are we nitpicking? Are we just going to a very narrow element of inaccuracy in the claim? Or is it sufficiently false to cause a substantively false understanding? And the third is, okay, so the claim is true. So the audience believe the claim is true, but it is substantively false. It creates a substantively false understanding. Does the audience have the capacity and the motivation to do anything about it that's going to make a difference in the real world? How you do this is more complicated than I can discuss in 8 minutes, and I've got 1 minute more, I see. But let me illustrate this with these questions, well, let me illustrate why these questions matter with some examples, briefly. So first, in most cases, people need to believe a claim to at least some degree in order to act on it in a way that causes harm. No, not there. There we go. Okay. On the left is a false claim that apricot seeds are a cure for cancer. If just one person believes this false claim and acts on it, it could cause harm, because eating too many apricot seeds can kill you. Evidence showed that people believed the claim. It had a clear potential to cause practical harm. On the right is a false claim making a political point about a soldier in Nigeria. Turns out, in fact, that the soldier shown is from Democratic Republic of Congo. People can see this because he's speaking a language called Lingala, which is not spoken in Nigeria. Nobody believed it. And in order for it to have had effect, you'd have to have a political effect, you'd have had to have persuaded a lot of people. The second claim, the second question, is the understanding substantively false? So both of these claims are inaccurate, but one of them is substantively false. The first was the claim that the Nigerian president actually died in 2017, and he'd been buried at that time, and that the Western media had covered this up as part of some conspiracy. He'd been replaced by a lookalike that undermined the legitimacy of the government. It was completely false. He finished his second term in 2023. The second claim on the right is inaccurate. It's a photograph of a shop that was burned out in disturbances in Nigeria. That shop was burned out in 2015. The claim spread in 2019. The photo was old, but the understanding of what had happened was true. Those sorts of events had happened. The third question, third of three questions, is can you do anything about your false understanding? So the first example, a false claim about Hillary Clinton that spread in 2019 in South Africa. In 2019, nobody in South Africa had a vote on Hillary Clinton. I mean, to be frank, in 2016, very few people did. If you have a false understanding about this matter, you have a false understanding. There's very little you can do about it that is substantive. The second claim, turmeric is a cure for cancer. This is something that you could do something about it at that time as an individual. You can go out and buy turmeric. The third point is that the third example is a false claim that spread in 2019 about the popularity of politicians in Kenyan elections. The Kenyan elections were not happening for 3 more years. If I believed this at that time, there was nothing in practice I could do about it. But if it builds into a false narrative, it's why fact-checkers need to look at narratives, it could affect my view in 3 years' time. So, last point, because I see I am over time. There are lots of reasons to fact-check claims. It is not simply about understanding the veracity of the claims. There are many effects that fact-checking has which are very often not properly understood. But understanding misinformation's potential to cause harm or not to cause harm is fundamentally important. Later this year, I'm going to be having the pleasure of working on a small trial with colleagues at 3 fact-checking organizations, trying to see if we can apply in practice this model to the work that fact-checkers do. If we do that, it gives us reason to protect freedom of speech, freedom of the media, who make mistakes, get things wrong that do not matter, and focus our work on claims and work that harms. So I hope it helps what the community does. Shukran.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Well, I invite Peter, if you stay here, and I'll invite my 4 other speakers to join me here on the podium to try to see if there are any questions we can take. We have a few minutes that we can take some questions from the audience. But while I'm waiting for my 4 speakers to join me here, it's just that I think that we listened all to 5 different perspectives quite interestingly, that focus on having to be vigilant in the age and in this conflictive world that we live in, with a supercharged information superhighway, and also a supercharged audience that are keen and quick to press send and to press forward. So I'm gonna maybe ask my delegate first. Maybe I'll start with Luis. To what extent do you believe that technology has been propelling populist leaders in our society?
I'm going to use these microphones because I don't have the other one. I think that the combination of technology, new media, and the current crisis in our societies, the representation crisis, is a very strong combination. And it just started. It is just started. You cannot imagine, I am a political consultant, how fast this phenomenon started to grow from a very little, I don't know, popularity to 50 or more % of the electorate in about months or weeks. So it's an upcoming phenomenon, but I think it's going to change the way we realize, we understand democracy all over the world.
Thank you, Luis. Anybody has any comment on the same question? While I'm waiting for questions from the audience. If you can head to the microphone, thank you very much. I'll take all the questions all at once, and then hopefully if you can identify yourself and who are you trying to ask.
Thank you very much. My name is Khairi Abu Shagur. I'm from Libya. My question is to do with, I noticed that everybody's using misinformation and disinformation almost interchangeably. There's a huge difference between the two, and I don't even know if there's an Arabic differentiation when you translate misinformation and disinformation. Why is this? Why is this the case? Because really, there's a huge difference.
Yes.
We take another question.
Okay.
أنا رحمن غريب من مركز ميترو للحريات
Rahman Gharib from KRI in Iraq. Actually, about the misleading news, and it's a phenomena we are suffering from. We are suffering from in KRI. But you didn't speak actually about the credibility and accountability of the communication companies, the large communication companies that are supporting social media in banning, or they should stop the expansion of this phenomena. NGOs and activists and academia are not enough. The accountability of these companies is giving momentum to this phenomena.
Those who didn't get the translation and don't have their headphone, he's asking what is the role of the big tech in trying to control this flow of misinformation and disinformation in the public sphere.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'd like to know whether you can point us to some data that shows the tractions of fact-checking in Africa. I'm curious to know that.
Thank you. Do you want to go ahead with the first question,
Yes,
Doctor?
you want me to answer? Of course, in Arabic.
Yes.
باللغة العربية في غنى بيسمح لنا إنه نفس الكلمة
We can rely on the same word to depend on these words in two different concepts. We talk about the disinformation that are in original disinformation, so that intentionally are falsified to disinform, and there's other disinformed information that are, it means that the information might contain some false aspects to it. That's why there's not a separate world from misinformation, disinformation, but are distinguished by the information between the falsified
Just quickly for
information.
my audience, it's about misinformation and disinformation in the context in the Arabic. You could please go ahead.
A point, yes. Sorry if I repeat something because I didn't get the Arabic. In Spanish, we do not have the difference between disinformation and misinformation. We only have one word. So fortunately, in English, we may make this difference.
And in Arabic, in that factor.
Arabic as well. Okay, there's a UNESCO definition of the three ones: misinformation, malinformation, and misinformation. Mal, miss, this. So maybe I just to recommend if you could go on for the UNESCO definitions and see in Arabic which one is the best.
So we need to go and work on redefining those terminologies and work on the semantic of the language. Do you want to take the second question?
The question
about the role of the tech company, or anybody would like also to join about this?
I think I can have an addition on it. بالنسبة لي شخصيا كدارس للمجال
As for me, I think it's a warm competition. Who contains the largest number of data? Some things, sometimes it might be violations for intellectual laws and some bias that might can induce based on the collected database. So it's armed competition in an Arabic world. If we are going to willing to join this battle or this development, we have to we agree in creating research centers to have these models to provide these to have this database accessible for others and work together. And eventually, we cannot blame others for the lack of our database.
Thank you. Peter, your thought?
Yeah, I mean, well, so first thing is mis and disinformation, whatever we call it. It's not only an online problem. Radio stations in Rwanda contributed to a genocide
it was on the radio
in 1994. Public media in many countries and so on. Political misinformation at rallies or with your chainsaw or whatever it might be. So it's much more complicated than online. That's number one. Number two is some tech companies do something, many do not. They don't do enough, and many do nothing at all. That's really a problem of regulation. So I think that's really a question. You know, we look to the companies. We should be requiring through regulation that is carefully thought out. So you don't just give power to politicians to decide, I don't like this piece of information about me, I don't like that piece of information about me. It's a systemic thing that's done under international human rights law about freedom of expression and so on to recognize harm. So it's a regulation problem, I think, more than a company problem.
I think that the problem is with the advance of technology, the fast and speedy development, most states are falling behind, especially due to maybe also we live in a conflictive world more than ever before. There is no multilateralism, it's absent. Luis.
Fake news are extremely important in political campaigns, but I want to share with you a personal experience. You cannot imagine how direct is the influence of the Chinese interest in TikTok, for instance. As journalist, I experienced that. I'm taking advantage. If you check my TikTok account, when I talk about China on TV, my TV channel is very popular in Argentina and in other countries all around, and I am on TV every single night, and I make international comments. And when I do something or I say something which is convenient for the Chinese interests, I have, I don't know, 4 or 5 million impact. Same news portrayed in another way. I made the experiment, 15,000, 20,000. And this is just the algorithm.
So you believe that the state has the tools if they want to?
The Chinese government, yes. I don't know if the Ecuadorian government can do that.
There is, anybody has thought on the last question that we got?
Yes, I would like to share a final thought, because somebody said something, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but I considered brilliant. They said the critical problem now is not about freedom of speech, but also freedom of reach. Because actually we think that social media is speaking without any intermediate, and actually it's hyper intermediation. So I would recommend you, if you can search a bit about what is called the inequality participatory theory, which states that only one person out of 100 really engages with the content. And while I was coming to Amman, I read some new research that states that now it's not one person, now it's 0.75. So actually we're living the dictatorship of algorithms.
So, do you want me just to answer?
Go ahead.
There was actually one
address
question.
Yes, the last question.
Yes, about the traction. So, traction of fact-checking in Africa. So, the short answer is no. I don't have any data on that. There are elements of a broad picture. I think the same would be true in this region, in other regions. The number of fact-checking organizations has grown remarkably. As my colleague Noko was saying, 2017 there were 2 fact-checking organizations that we knew of in Africa. Today there are 40 plus that are members of Africa Facts. That's the first thing. So there's more activity. The second thing is the way that fact-checking has effect is really complicated, and much more than we have time for to discuss now. But I think that's a thing that fact-checkers need to understand. You don't just measure it by your audience, and so on. So it's a much more complicated.
Okay, I'm going to take one more
paradigm.
question because I already said, and then we can close the session. Please go ahead.
مرحبا، شكرا جزيلا. طبعا دكتور عراج.
I'm from Samara University from Iraq. I have 2 things that might be beyond the truth about the question. The first question is about the claim, or each claim has an ideological background. So what I think, this is a fact. When I think it's a fact, others might consider it not truth. This is a problem. The second question is about what's beyond the events. Maybe some events that are influenced the communities. What is the importance of revealing the truth after the impact has already been done?
هذه الأشياء أحدث تأثيراتها.
Thank you. Quickly to translate briefly, ideology and the claims, and I think weaponization of them. And the second, what is happened after the events that led, like as a result of maybe incitement and so on social media and its impact, that we don't see the end of it basically, or the result of investigation afterward about their impact on society. Do you want to go ahead with ideology?
Yes, I think ideology flourished all over our time, but the truth remains essential. And we need truth for the simple reason that truth is a right, and we need to continue affirming this human right, like having the truth. And of course, you know that truth is essential to accountability, truth to the power. So we need to continue speaking the truth.
Any final?
May I add something?
You can.
كمان اقتباس من عند فولتير بيقول إنه بما معنى الحقيقة.
The meaning of truth and lies can reach out very quickly, but the truth will always take longer, but eventually it will be here. So we shouldn't stop about where lying is.
Just follow up and pick up from Voltaire and what Dr. Mirna has said. I'll go and I'll take you back to think about the most essential idea about what makes news and what makes information. We learned a long time ago that, a dog bites a man is not news. A man bites a dog is news. And now we have it supercharged in sensationalist way and people making money from it. The main thing and the fight against it is collaboration, collaboration, education, education, and take a pause, think, somebody is making money before you forward something that could harm cohesiveness and social cohesiveness around you and muddle the water for many people. Thank you, my panelists, Luis, Peter, Jihad, Albertina, and Dr. Amina. Thank you very much for being here.